People always say you remember the little things on the big days. A smell, a sound, the way the sky looked. I don't remember much about that day before the wedding except for the voice note. June in Vermont has this way of feeling both timeless and fragile. Like you're walking through a postcard, but you know the edges will curl and fade eventually. That morning, the lake was glass still. The air smelled like cedar, the staff was scrambling around with folding chairs and wine glasses, and my mom was texting me pictures of her dress options even though she'd already chosen one weeks ago. Everything was supposed to be coming together. Everyone kept saying, "You must be so excited," like it was some sort of mantra. But I wasn't excited. I was tired. I chalked it up to the planning, the late nights building seating charts, the catering tastings that turned into arguments, Rachel's growing obsession with floral symmetry. For a while, I convinced myself the pressure was normal. Everyone's stressed before the wedding, right? Still, I couldn't shake this feeling that something wasn't clicking. Rachel had seemed distant for weeks. Not cold, just elsewhere. I'd catch her looking off into space mid-conversation, or she'd flinch when I touched her shoulder like she wasn't expecting it. I told myself it was wedding nerves. Nothing more. That morning, I arrived early at the venue to walk the grounds alone before the chaos really kicked in. I wanted a moment to breathe, to ground myself. I stood near the altar, imagining tomorrow. Me in a tailored suit. Rachel walking down the aisle in her dream dress. Everyone we loved looking on, smiling. Applauding. Crying. It was everything I thought I wanted. And then my phone buzzed. A voice note from Rachel. I almost didn't play it. We'd been sending each other little messages throughout the day, sweet, meaningless stuff. But this one was longer. Over a minute. Her name flashed across the screen. And the moment I hit play, my chest tightened. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Her voice was low, almost shaky. Like she didn't know the recorder was on. I heard her inhale sharply, and then she spoke. "I don't know if I can do this." I froze. My hand was still in my pocket, wrapped around the velvet ring box I had been carrying for days. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, my heart thudding like a war drum. She continued, her voice raw and uneven. "Everything feels so fake. I keep trying to picture tomorrow, and it just feels like I'm playing a role. Like I'm reading a script someone else wrote. And I know I'm supposed to be happy. I know everyone expects me to be excited, but I'm not. I'm scared. I'm exhausted. And God, I just can't pretend anymore." She paused. I thought it was over. But then she spoke again, softer this time. "Trevor, I'm sorry. I know you said I need to make a choice, and I promise I will. But I can't go through with it. I can't marry Nate. I thought I could, but I can't. I don't remember breathing after that. I must have, obviously, but in that moment it felt like the air had vanished from the world. Trevor." She said it so casually. Like it was a name she'd said 1,000 times. Not hidden. Not ashamed. Just natural. I played the message again. And again. Each time hoping maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe Trevor was her cousin. Maybe it was some rehearsal scene she was reading for. Maybe God, anything. But no. I knew that tone. That softness. That guilt. She hadn't meant to send it to me. That message wasn't for me at all. And yet somehow it was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I didn't storm off. I didn't call her. I just stood there, surrounded by hydrangeas and burlap bows, the hum of a delivery truck backing up in the distance, the breeze rustling through the tall grass. I felt like a stranger at my own wedding. Hours passed before I confronted her. I didn't want to do it over text or in front of anyone else. I waited until that evening when we were back at the Airbnb with her parents and my brother. I asked her to step outside with me. The fireflies were out, flickering in the fading light. She looked radiant, I'll admit. She always did. Even in betrayal, she had this warmth about her that pulled people in. I showed her the message. I didn't say a word, just hit play and watched her face. She didn't flinch. She didn't deny it either. Instead, she let out a slow breath and said, "I didn't mean to send that to you." Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "I recorded it earlier when I was overwhelmed. I was just venting, Nate. You know how emotional I've been lately. I didn't even realize I hit send." "Who's Trevor?" I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. She looked away. "A friend. From work." I laughed. It was the kind of laugh that doesn't carry any joy, just disbelief. "Right? A friend." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even explain. Instead, she placed her hand on my arm and said it meant nothing. I was just scared. I needed to say it out loud, and Trevor's been supportive. That's all. I stared at her, looking for any flicker of remorse. Any crack in the mask. But she just smiled, soft, sympathetic, and said, "The wedding's still on. Tomorrow's going to be beautiful. Let's not let this ruin everything, okay?" And just like that, she turned and walked back inside. I stood there for a long time after she left, staring at the stars above the tree line, wondering how I become the kind of man someone settled for. The kind of man someone confided about behind his back. I could have called it off then. I had every reason. But I didn't. Not yet. Some part of me, maybe the stupidly loyal part, still hoped it was just a crack. That maybe love could fill it in. That I could forgive a message that was never meant for me. But even then, I knew better. After that night, everything looked different. Not because the world had changed, but because now I was actually seeing it. It's strange how the truth doesn't always hit like a thunderclap. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, slowly rewriting your memories from the inside out. That's what happened to me. One voice message, one name, Trevor, and suddenly the past year of my life turned into a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces had been hiding under the table. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was just wedding nerves, just a bad moment. Rachel had been under pressure. People say crazy things under pressure. She said she wanted to marry me. She said the wedding was still on. What more could I want? But I couldn't unhear her voice from that message. The fear. The regret. The honesty. And once I stopped trying to convince myself everything was fine, I started noticing the cracks. The ones that had always been there. Like that weekend in January, just after New Year's. I booked a surprise trip for the two of us. A cozy mountain cabin, champagne, snowshoeing, total Hallmark movie energy. Rachel had been thrilled when I first mentioned I had something planned. I was proud of it. I even got her boss in on it to clear her schedule without tipping her off. Then 2 days before we were supposed to leave, she said she wasn't feeling well. Fever, chills, total flu mode. I canceled everything, ate the cancellation fees, made her soup, stocked up on Gatorade. She said she just needed rest. But later that week, while looking for her phone charger in her tote bag, I found a boarding pass stub tucked inside a novel. A one-way flight to Charlotte. Rachel doesn't have family in Charlotte. When I asked her about it, she didn't miss a beat. Said she'd booked it before she got sick, planning to visit an old friend, but canceled last minute and forgot to throw it away. I let it slide. Why wouldn't I? We were in love. We trusted each other. Right? Except now, with Trevor echoing in my ears, that stub wasn't just a coincidence. It was the first lie I didn't recognize as one. And then there was the cologne. February. Valentine's Day. She came home late from a last-minute team meeting at a wine bar. She was glowing, flushed cheeks, bright eyes, the kind of energy she used to bring home from early dates. But there was something else too. A smell. Not perfume. Not alcohol. Cologne. Distinct. Masculine. Sharp. I remember leaning in to kiss her and pulling back with a wrinkle in my nose. I joked about it. Who've you been hugging? I said, half laughing. She laughed too. You know those perfume counters at Nordstrom? I got ambushed. Back then, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But now? It all felt like a script. Something she'd rehearsed. Something Trevor would have smiled at. The memories started stacking up like dominoes. Late-night texts that made her smile, then disappear into another room. Times she said she needed space, but never explained what from. The Sunday she skipped brunch with my parents because she was overwhelmed and needed a mental health day, and then posted a photo on her private story from a rooftop downtown, mimosa in hand. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. That I should be supportive, not suspicious. Rachel was a strong woman, independent, smart. She didn't owe me a play-by-play of every hour. That's what love is, right? Trusting even when you feel that tug of doubt. But that doubt, man, it doesn't let go. It waits in the quiet moments. It sharpens your vision. It makes you remember things you weren't supposed to remember. Like how she started locking her phone a few months ago. Not just locking it, but turning it face down, taking it into the bathroom, even changing her password. Or how she started leaving early on Saturdays, saying she had yoga or errands, and coming home with excuses about traffic and dead batteries. Once I followed her, not far, just out of curiosity. I was headed to the hardware store and saw her getting into an Uber. I watched the car drive in the opposite direction of the gym she claimed to be going to. I didn't follow. I didn't want to be that guy. But now I wish I had. There was even that night in March when we got into a fight about her being on her phone during dinner. She was texting under the table. I called her out gently, just said I felt like I was eating alone. She looked at me and said, maybe I need more than just a boyfriend who wants to talk about spreadsheets and takeout menus. Boyfriend. Not fiancé. She said it like the word didn't mean anything anymore. Like it had expired. She apologized after, said it was a bad joke, a slip of the tongue. But I'd never felt more like a placeholder in my own relationship. It wasn't like there were blowout fights or dramatic screaming matches. Rachel was too composed for that. No, it was all in the silences. The careful distance. The avoidance. Her eyes darting when I asked simple questions. The forced smiles. It was the little things. The way she used to squeeze my hand 3 times during movies, our secret I love you code, and how she just stopped. The way she'd turn away slightly when I went to kiss her in the morning. How she never asked about my day anymore, but still made sure to ask me to Venmo her half of every grocery run. I didn't want to see the pattern. But after that voice message, it was everywhere. And the worst part? I started to wonder how long I'd been pretending not to see it. Had I known, somewhere deep down, and just chosen to ignore it? Had I wanted this wedding so badly that I let myself become blind? I thought about the version of Rachel I used to know, the one who made scavenger hunts for my birthday, who once sat through 3 hours of a documentary about fishing just because I said I liked it. The one who brought me soup when I had the flu and rubbed my back until I fell asleep. Was she gone? Or had I just never really known her? I started to replay every memory, every smile, every moment we'd spent planning this wedding. And I kept asking myself, who was she thinking about during those moments? Was it me, or was it Trevor? Who even was Trevor? I didn't have a last name. No photo. Just a first name dropped into a voice note like a grenade. But he was real. He had to be. You don't confess something like that to a ghost. And yet, she acted like nothing had happened. That night, Rachel climbed into bed beside me, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Tomorrow's going to be the happiest day of our lives." I turned to face the wall. Her hand rested on my back for a moment. Then it was gone. I laid there in the dark, eyes open, watching the slow rotation of the ceiling fan, feeling the weight of every unanswered question pressing down on my chest. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't cold feet. This was something else. And I had a sinking feeling I wasn't done uncovering it. Not by a long sh*t. Some things don't need an explanation. You just hear them, see them, feel them, and you know. That morning I knew. It was the day after I got that first voice note. The day after Rachel looked me in the eye, told me the message meant nothing, and reminded me yet again that the wedding was still happening. She had gone to bed early, said she needed rest for the big day. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling for hours, every breath heavy, every muscle in my chest wound tight. I kept replaying that moment outside the Airbnb when she dismissed the whole thing. Her voice had been calm, but too calm, like someone trying not to drop a glass already cracked. At some point in the night, I must have dozed off. I woke to the buzz of my phone on the nightstand. Groggy, disoriented, I reached for it without thinking. It was a voice note. Another one. From Rachel. This time, it was 24 seconds long. Sent at 3:17 a.m. I didn't play it right away. My hand trembled as I stared at the screen. I knew I shouldn't listen. I knew nothing good would come from it. But I tapped play anyway. Her voice came through immediately, but it wasn't the Rachel I knew, the composed, put-together, social media curated version. No, this was her real voice. Stripped down. Unaware. Vulnerable. And not alone. I could hear laughter. A man's laugh. Deep, unfiltered, and close, too close. I could hear shuffling sheets. A faint clink like a glass being set on a nightstand. Then Rachel spoke, her tone light, happy, teasing. Okay, stop, she said between giggles. You're gonna make me lose my voice before the ceremony. Then, quieter, her voice dipped. I just hate pretending. The room went silent. Only the sound of sheets rustling, someone adjusting themselves. She continued, almost whispering, but the recorder picked it up all the same. I'm tired of being two people. I'm tired of putting on a face for Nate. He doesn't deserve this. I know. But what am I supposed to do? It's too late to walk away. Everything's planned. Everything's paid for. A pause. Her breath caught. I wish I had met you sooner. The voice note ended. No click. No goodbye. No second thoughts. I sat up in bed, my pulse thudding like a drumline in my ears. My whole body felt cold. It was like falling into ice water, every nerve going numb and yet somehow on fire. She hadn't meant to send it. That much was obvious. The recorder must have been on by accident. Maybe she rolled onto her phone, or maybe she hit the mic icon without realizing. But none of that mattered. Because what she said, that mattered. That was the truth. I replayed the message once. Just once. That was all I could take. The sound of her voice, the laughter, the softened asterisk Macy, it didn't belong to me. Not anymore. Maybe it never had. I stared at my screen for a long time afterward. I could have forwarded it to myself. I could have saved it. I could have sent it to her just to watch her squirm. But instead I deleted it. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted to pretend it hadn't happened. But because I knew something else now, something worse. This wasn't just cheating. This was escape. She wasn't confused. She wasn't panicking. She was relieved. Relieved to be with someone else. Relieved to speak her real thoughts out loud even if she hadn't meant for me to hear them. It wasn't just that she had feelings for another man. It was that she'd spent months lying to me while simultaneously trying to construct the illusion of a perfect love story. She wasn't planning to come clean. She wasn't struggling to choose. She had already chosen. She had just never told me. I swung my legs over the bed and sat there, staring at the floor. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but I could hear birds starting to chirp outside. The air in the room felt too still, too staged, like a prop in someone else's life. On the dresser sat Rachel's bouquet, an early gift from her maid of honor. The note tied around the stems said, "Tomorrow starts forever." I wanted to throw it out the window. But I didn't. I just sat there, holding the silence like a bomb that had already gone off. I thought about how I had proposed to her. A weekend trip to Boston. A walk along the harbor. I had planned it for weeks, practiced the speech, chosen the ring based on everything she had casually mentioned over the years. She had cried when I asked. Said yes with her whole body. Had that been real? Had any of it? Or had I just been filling a role she didn't want to play anymore? Around 6 a.m. I left the room. I couldn't sit there and listen to her stir awake next to me, not after hearing her voice say those words to someone else. I needed air. I needed space. I walked down to the edge of the lake, the mist still curling along the surface like breath. There were no sounds except the soft lap of water and the faint hum of bugs. I sat on the bench near the dock where we were supposed to take our first look photos that afternoon. I should have been feeling devastated, but honestly, I just felt hollow. Like the pain had gone so deep it wrapped back around into numbness. There was no sobbing, no rage, just a quiet unraveling. I had spent over a year planning a future with someone who didn't love me enough to tell me the truth. That kind of slow betrayal doesn't hit like a slap, it sinks like a stone. I wasn't going to confront her again. What was the point? She had already made peace with what she was doing. She was already lying in someone else's bed, whispering about how hard it was to pretend with me. That's what really got me. Not the cheating. Not the secrecy. But the acting. She knew I loved her. She knew I trusted her. And she had still smiled at me across dinner tables. Still kissed me goodnight. Still talked about the future with the same lips that whispered apologies into someone else's ear. Back at the Airbnb, I stood outside the door for a long time before going back in. I could hear her moving around upstairs, probably getting ready to play the part of bride-to-be again. The urge to leave then and there was strong, just grab my things, leave a note, disappear. But something stopped me. Maybe I needed her to see it unravel in real time. Maybe I needed to say goodbye without actually saying it. I didn't speak to her that morning. She asked if I was okay. I nodded. She leaned in for a kiss and I gave her my cheek. She looked at me for a second too long. I think part of her knew. But she didn't ask. She didn't press. She was too used to getting away with things by pretending they weren't real. And I was too tired to keep playing along. That afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror in my dressing room at the venue wearing the tux I'd picked out 6 months earlier. I looked the part. Groom. Partner. Man in love. But inside? I was already gone. The thing about wedding mornings is that everyone assumes you're nervous. It's part of the performance. They hand you coffee with that knowing look, they pat you on the back a little harder than usual, they throw out cliches like, "It's not too late to run," with a laugh that doesn't quite cover their own belief in the institution. But I wasn't nervous. I was numb. I went through the motions. Showered. Shaved. Put on the socks Rachel had embroidered for me for cold feet, they read in white thread. Everyone thought it was adorable. Her little surprise tucked into my tux bag. They didn't know the irony of it nearly cracked me in half. The groomsmen were in the next room cracking beers, trading college stories, asking if I'd written my vows. One of them asked if I was going to cry when I saw her coming down the aisle. I said probably. He grinned and said, "That's how you know it's real." I didn't have the energy to correct him. The venue was already buzzing. Guests were arriving early to claim good seats. Strings of fairy lights danced in the breeze. There were soft jazz covers playing through the speakers, mason jar centerpieces glistening in the sun. Rachel's cousin was crying over how perfect it all was. My aunt asked if we'd considered kids right away or if we were going to just enjoy being married for a while. Someone else wanted to know if we were keeping our honeymoon location a secret. I nodded. I smiled. I said all the right things. Because that's what I was supposed to do. That's what she was doing too. Rachel arrived at the venue like royalty. Her makeup team, her hairstylist, her maid of honor orbiting around her like she was the sun. And she played it flawlessly, hugs for the moms, laughter with the bridesmaids, a heartfelt moment with her dad on the porch. No one could have guessed that just a few hours earlier, she'd been in bed with someone else whispering about how exhausted she was from pretending. But I knew. And that changed everything. We were set to walk down the aisle at 3 p.m. At 2:40, the coordinator came into my dressing room looking slightly uncomfortable. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Rachel's requesting a 15-minute delay," she said, hands clasped in front of her like she was bracing for something. "She just needs a little extra time with her dress." I nodded slowly. "Of course," I said. "Tell her to take all the time she needs." She left, probably relieved that I didn't react. But that delay wasn't about the dress. I knew that. 15 minutes was just enough time to calm shaky hands, to practice her smile, to make a last-minute call to someone named Trevor. I sat back in the chair and stared at my reflection. I looked like a man on the verge of something. Not breakdown exactly, but maybe transformation. Like my soul had just realized the ground beneath it wasn't real. I pulled out my vows. A small card I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. I'd poured everything into those lines, every inside joke, every hard moment we'd weathered, every quiet hope I'd never said out loud. And now? Now, I couldn't read a single sentence without feeling like a fool. I folded the card slowly, placed it in the drawer of the vanity, and closed it like sealing a tomb. At 3:05, the coordinator returned and said, "We're ready whenever you are." I took a breath. Not the kind you take to steel yourself for marriage, but the kind you take when you're about to do something that will change everything. I walked out into the garden where the guests were waiting. The music faded as people turned to look at me. Some smiled. Some whispered. Everyone expected the groom to be walking to the altar, not toward the mic stand. Rachel wasn't there yet. That was part of the plan. She wanted her entrance to be impactful. She had a specific part of the song picked for when she'd walk through the rose arch. I stepped up to the microphone and cleared my throat. The breeze died down. The leaves stilled. "I want to thank everyone for being here," I began, my voice even. "Really. It means the world to both of us that you traveled, dressed up, and showed up to celebrate what was supposed to be a turning point in our lives." There was some nervous laughter, unsure smiles. No one knew where this was going yet. I continued. "I'm not going to draw this out and I won't give you details. But I want you to know there won't be a wedding today." A sharp inhale moved through the crowd like wind through grass. I paused, let the silence land, let the weight of my words settle. There's no scandal here. No villain, no scene. Just truth. And sometimes truth shows up late and ruins the party. People shifted in their seats. Some leaned in. A child started crying. I could hear my mother's bracelet clinking as her hand *T up to cover her mouth. "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it. "I know it's disappointing, and I know many of you traveled far. But I'd rather disappoint you today than spend the rest of my life disappointing myself." I stepped back from the mic. No one clapped. No one knew if they were supposed to. And that was okay. I walked off the platform and straight past the floral arch. I didn't go back to the dressing room. I didn't go looking for Rachel. I didn't need to. I already knew where she stood. She had made her choice long before this day. She just hadn't said it out loud. As I passed the catering tent, I saw one of the servers glance at me with wide eyes, mouthing something to another. I kept walking. The parking lot was quiet. A few guests had already started standing, murmuring about what they just witnessed. My dad's voice floated faintly from the background, telling someone to give me space. I got into my car, loosened the tie Rachel had insisted matched her bouquet, and sat for a moment. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I had no idea what else to do. I laughed, loud and sharp, alone in my car, dressed in a suit that no longer had a purpose. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something real. Back at the venue, the music started again. I found out later they played one of our reception songs anyway. Some people stayed and danced. Others left quickly, unsure of what to say. My brother told me Rachel didn't come outside for almost an hour. When she did, she was in sweatpants. She said she understood my decision. That word, understood, felt like such a joke. She didn't understand. Not really. Because if she had, she would have told me the truth before it came to this. But maybe that was the truth. She never meant for it to come to this. She thought I'd never find out. She thought I'd never leave. She thought wrong. That night, I didn't go home. I didn't answer calls or texts. I drove to a small motel 2 towns over. Checked in under a fake name. ordered takeout and sat on the edge of a clean, anonymous bed eating cold Chinese food in a tuxedo I couldn't bring myself to take off. The room was silent. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, still as stone, staring at the condensation on the takeout box. And that was how I ended what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Not with a kiss, not with a dance, but with a quiet refusal to be someone else's backup plan. It's amazing how quickly people move on from your life when the party gets canceled. The day after the non-wedding, my phone buzzed constantly. Well-meaning messages from friends. A couple of "you okay, man?" texts. One floral delivery from someone who must not have heard. But by day 3, the silence set in. Not an absence, more like a vacuum. Even the people closest to me didn't quite know what to say. They tiptoed around it like grief had sharp edges. But silence I could live with. It was the noise I didn't see coming. On the second morning after, I woke up to an email from someone I didn't recognize. No subject line. No name. Just an address I'd never seen before and an attachment labeled FYI. I almost deleted it. Then I saw the file name, Convos, Rachel and Trevor. My throat closed. I sat up in bed, staring at the screen like it might burst into flames. I knew I shouldn't open it. I'd already made my decision. I'd walked away. Why twist the knife? But my curiosity wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About the part of me that still, somewhere deep down, wondered if I'd exaggerated everything. If I'd overreacted. So I opened it. *TS. Not just one or two, but a full string. Dozens. A meticulous capture of messages between Rachel and Trevor, over weeks, maybe months. No greetings. No preamble. Just her words, clear as glass. The first one was time-stamped the night before the wedding. Rachel, I still can't sleep. I keep thinking I should call it off tomorrow. But then I think about how everyone will be there. The money, the photos, the dress. I keep telling myself I can fake it for one more day. That line hit me the hardest. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like it was a mantra she'd been saying in the mirror. Trevor, you don't have to fake anything. You don't owe anyone a performance. Especially not him. Especially not him. That him was me. The next message came from her. An hour later. Rachel, I know, but I still feel guilty. He's been nothing but good to me. I was never in it the way he was. That one punched a hole in my chest. There it was. The quiet confession I'd never gotten to hear directly. The one I'd been waiting for without even realizing it. I was never in it the way he was. That's the thing about betrayal. It's not always the lies that cut deepest. It's the parts they never bothered to say out loud. The truths they sat on while you planned a future for two. I kept scrolling. Trevor, you told me you felt trapped. You don't have to apologize for wanting to be free. Rachel, it's not that simple. I do love him, just not that way. My hands started shaking. I had to set the phone down. I do love him, just not that way. What does that even mean? Is that love? Is that what I was to her? A placeholder she respected enough to pity but not enough to be honest with? I picked the phone back up, desperate to be done but unable to stop reading. The next message was different. It had no context. No conversation surrounding it. It was a *T of a note she'd written in her phone. Nate feels like safety. Like insurance. Like something that makes sense on paper. But Trevor makes me feel alive. And if I choose Nate, I'm choosing a life I've already memorized. Not one I actually want. I sat perfectly still. If I choose Nate. Not if I stay with Nate. Not if I marry Nate. If I choose Nate. Like I was a box on a form. An option she could toggle between. A safety net. A rational decision. A strategy. Suddenly everything clicked. I remembered how she used to say I was her rock. I thought it was a compliment. Turns out it was code for emotionally convenient. She liked that I was steady. That I didn't ask questions. That I didn't demand fireworks or drama. But maybe she never wanted a rock. Maybe she wanted a spark. And Trevor, whoever he was, whatever he was, had become that spark. I don't know who sent me the email. There was no signature, no note of explanation. Just those images neatly lined up, a digital trail of the months she'd spent fading out of our relationship while still smiling at me over dinner. For a long time I just sat there, reading the same lines over and over. I thought about all the times I'd convinced myself I was being too sensitive. All the times I'd second-guessed a gut feeling. All the times I'd picked up slack for her, planned the seating chart, handled her uncle's gluten allergy, wrote thank you cards she never touched. I thought about the we I thought we were building. But Rachel hadn't been building a life with me. She'd been building an exit plan. That was the moment I stopped feeling angry. Not because I forgave her, but because anger requires energy and she didn't deserve any more of mine. This wasn't rage anymore. This was clarity. She didn't choose me. And not just in the romantic sense. She hadn't chosen me as a person. She had chosen what I could provide: structure, image, the optics of a good life. I was a resume quality relationship. And Trevor? He was the footnote that became the main event. And in a way, maybe it was a gift. Because now I didn't have to keep wondering. I didn't have to fill in the blanks. They were all filled in for me by strangers, by *TS, by a relationship I hadn't known I was a third party to. I deleted the email not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had the truth. And that was more than I'd ever gotten from her directly. Later that afternoon, I packed up the rest of my things from the Airbnb. Her stuff was still there: curling irons, false lashes, a half-full perfume bottle, her dress bag in the corner like a monument to a life that never happened. I didn't touch any of it. I left the key on the table, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. A few miles down the road, I stopped at a gas station. I grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of trail mix I had no intention of eating. When I got back into the car, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. A text. "Can we talk when you're ready?" I stared at the screen. For a second, my thumb hovered over the keyboard. I thought about what I could say, what she might be hoping I'd say. But then I locked the phone, dropped it in the passenger seat, and pulled back onto the road. She'd already said everything I needed to hear, even if she hadn't said it to me.